Okay, so in this session we're going to talk about valves. I'm going to demonstrate installing valves in a cylinder head. This particular cylinder head is from a Springfield Phantom 1 and it's an iron head. Later Phantom 1s went to an aluminum head. They do not really directly interchange. You could interchange them if you really wanted to, but it'd be an awful lot of work. So right now I have the cylinder head upside down so I can show the valve seats that they've been checked out and cleaned up. Take the video camera off so we can get a closer look here. Yeah, so you see they're nice and shiny and cleaned up and ground at the right angle. I have the number 1 valve in, so you can see how it fits in there. So we'll just pan down and you can see that they're all in good shape. The guides in this instance, which is this portion in here, had good clearance. They had been redone when the engine was rebuilt, which wasn't that many miles ago. It was a while ago, but not many miles. But we had to put new rings into this engine, and we figured this was a good time to make sure that everything was good with the valve seats and guides. And they did need a little bit of dressing. They were off a little bit. So if a guide is out of the engine, this is what it looks like. Or out of the head, I'm sorry. It's held in by this taper. This particular one is either iron or steel. In this head, they're bronze, and we'll look at those once I get the head spun around the other way. The valves that came in this cylinder head, show the number 2 one, are some sort of an aftermarket replacement. Not sure who made them. They're pretty nice though. I'll show you what an original looks like. So you can see, if I can focus in on there, the original markings and the part number, and you see the RR hopefully right there. And these are beautifully made. They did a really super wonderful job, just as they did with pistons. Valves were very, very well done. You can see how they tapered out the head nicely, and which made things a little lighter. So yeah, so this is again what the head looks like from the underside. Normally, if the engine was going to go through a complete rebuild, this cylinder head would have been taken all the way apart. All the core plugs would have been removed. The copper tubes would have been taken out. The end plates would have been taken out. Here's some more of the core plugs. All that would have been taken out in order to clean it, because a lot of these are full of congestion. And they also have to be very carefully checked for cracks, which can also be a pretty sad situation. And after cleaning, I recommend doing a resin impregnating. Pressure testing is very important to see if you can find any issues with leaks after all the core plugs are in, and also you want to resurface the deck. This one again was good, so we didn't need to do it this time around. The valve seats are part of the head in this case. They were cast in with the head, and so it's the same iron material as the rest of the head, which is a really strong, tough iron. I recommend sticking with these. A lot of times people will say, oh, we need to put in hardened valve seats, and they'll machine out the old ones and press in new ones. And the issue with that is when you go to press in the new ones, you can develop a crack. Or after you get the engine together and running and all, there's always a possibility that valve seat's going to work loose and pop out on you, which is quite a unfortunate incident if it happens, because you already machined this area. There's no going back to the way it was originally. And also, when you feel around in here, there's not a whole lot of material for pressing in a valve seat. It was intended to, you know, if it was intended to have a pressed in valve seat, there would be a lot more material around here for the pressing, so that it doesn't expand out so much and it'll hold the seat. So I also wanted to demonstrate one of the more interesting tools while the head is upside down. This is a valve retaining tool. Some cars have them in their toolkits, but not necessarily. This is an original tool. It threads into the spark plug hole. And the idea of it, once it's in position, is for this little arm to keep the valve in place. So this can be done when the this tool can be used when the cylinder head is still on the car. This will keep the valve in place, so you can remove the valve spring and maybe replace a seal or a broken spring if it was needed. I like to use the tool to hold the valve in place when I'm putting valves in. It just makes it a little nicer and easier. So I'll put the camera back on the tripod here. Another thing that I want to talk about while we're here are rockers. This is one of the rockers. This surface area can wear pretty heavily. It can on the top stem of the valve as well. And if you have any wear here, you really need to machine that area and get that trued back up again. Otherwise, you can't get a very good adjustment with your feeler gauge, because your feeler gauge will go only to the high spots and the depression in the middle won't be measured out. The other thing I find a lot of times with these rockers is that you have a hole here. Well, the hole does not communicate to the center of the rocker, so therefore no oil is coming out of this hole. I think it's a good idea to have oil coming out of this hole, and especially in this car. I noticed that a few of these were worn very, very heavily, and you could see filing starting to develop, and that was from a lack of lubrication. There just wasn't enough oil there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole out to communicate into the center, and then I'm going to put felt packing in there, and I'm going to put a brass plug in there, and then drill a small hole about 50 thousandths or so in diameter to allow a little bit of oil to come out occasionally and lubricate this. There was a directive in the Springfield service instructions to not drill this hole all the way through. They felt that there was too much oil getting up here and it was causing problems. But from what I've seen, that directive is not something that I want to follow suit with. So anyway, once you have that hole drilled through, then when oil is pressurized into the shaft, it's going to come out and through there, and the felt is going to help to kind of control so there's not a spurt coming out. It'll just be a nice drip on occasions. So again, I think that's a really important thing to do. If you look at all the British cars, they all have what I described with the plug in the end and a hole that communicates all the way through and felt in there. All the small horsepower cars and the Bentleys. So why Springfield felt they didn't need to do that, I don't know, but it's something that I recommend that you do. In this case, the valve seals are felt discs, and they used felt all the way until about the middle of the production of the Phantom 2. So all Phantom 1's iron head and aluminum head have felt. This is one of the springs. These have all been checked and they're all good and strong. I have our felt seals soaking in oil, ready for the installation. And these are the keepers, sort of very common style keeper you would see. And we also have the seal cap and the collet for the keepers. So that's basically all the hardware for holding in the valves. So I'm going to flip the cylinder head around so it's easier to work on to get the valves in. I'll get my stands ready. These are heavy suckers. Okay, so now we have the cylinder head sitting on its stands. These are really nice stands to have. I recommend that you get those if you're going to do any cylinder head work. They make life a lot easier. And you can see again that these are the bronze. Get the camera in a little closer. The bronze got there. And I'm going to, whoops, excuse me. So let's work on getting some valves in, demonstrate how this works. I'm going to get the wrenches for the tool. Thread the tool in place here. So each style of cylinder head has a different tool. So there's a different tool yet for the aluminum head, and then the small horsepower cars have their own different tool, etc., etc. Get this tightened up a little bit. Thread the spring compressor tool on that I like to use. Let's see if I can get the camera to show it a little bit better. This is a homemade tool. Works very well. Makes it work a little quicker. So we put that side there. Go to move the camera back a little bit so you can get a better view here. So we take our valve. This is number 2, going into the number 2 slot there. It's very important to keep the valves in order so that they go back into the same places where they came from. As far as the collets and the keepers and the seal caps, that's not necessary to keep those the same. So we put a little oil on the stem. Slide that in place. Tighten up the retaining tool. Get a felt seal out. Slide that down the stem. Then we put our seal cap on. You'll notice there's a little hole. I normally put the holes so that they're facing each other, so it'd be right there. I don't know how important that is. I was told to do that, and so I still do. So put the seal cap in place. Put our spring in place. Our collet for the keepers. Then we adjust our tool a little bit, I think, maybe not. Maybe I used this on this not long ago. Yeah, it needs a little adjustment. Sneak the keepers in. One keeper is in. Let's get the other one in. They line up and go in, and then there you are. So everything's in place. Everyone can see the tool a little bit better now and how that works. So then we undo our valve retaining tool. Take this out of the spark plug and hole here and put it in the next one. Alright, so I'll do maybe one or two more of these. so you don't have to sit and watch me do 12 of the same thing over. Valve number 3. Oil on the stem. Put it in place. Keep it retained. Felt seal. Wheelie little buggers. Seal cap. Spring. Collet. I grabbed a small screwdriver and a magnet. Sometimes they're useful to have when you're positioning in the keepers. Grab 2 keepers. You have to move the tool over to the next stud here. Press the spring. And in the keepers. Sometimes it takes a little wiggling around to get them to go. Okay, now we'll do another one. Another thing that I like to do is just give it a little exercise just to make sure it feels nice and smooth, it's not hanging up. And you want to push on this top stem of the valve. You don't want to push the collet or everything's going to undo on you potentially. Give it a little exercise, make sure it's good and free and everything's staying in place. Move this over to the next stud. Grab valve number 4. Number 4. I always work from the front of the cylinder head to the rear. And the front, you know, is the front because it has the water outlet. Slide the valve up. Put the retainer in position and tighten it. Put a seal on. If you have an excessive amount of wear in your guides, I recommend to have them sleeved with bronze sleeves. I think that's a better way to go than replacing the whole guide. Getting guides in and out can potentially crack the head since they're in on a taper. And also I think that bronze is a better surface bearing surface area than the original iron ones. The original bronze ones, you know, again, if they're worn, you can sleeve those as well. Collet plate. All that in place. Keepers. And then compress. Put your keepers in. Try not to get my elbow in the way here. Do a little adjustment. And it slid right in there. Okay, so I showed you how to put 3 valves in. One was already in. I think at this point in time you probably have a gist of how all this works. And the tools and what they look like and all. So there you have it.